Life is a journey of unpredictable ups and downs. We think we have everything figured out. Life can sometimes throw us a curveball and then we're left feeling disorientated and off balance. These curveballs can come in so many forms, whether it's various challenges, different seasons of life, injuries, or anything else that's like an unforeseen circumstance. Challenges, of course, do have the potential to derail us. They can leave us feeling a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit defeated, but it's so important to recognize that curveballs are just part of the human experience. Quick little thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring a portion of today's video. If you've watched any of my recent videos, you might know that I injured my back a little while ago. I sprained my spine, which meant that I had to take it really easy with my training. When it was bad, I couldn't even get to like 3,000, 4,000 steps in a day, which is so abnormal for me because I'm someone who, like, I would prefer to walk to my appointments. I prefer to walk to and from the gym. Like, I like to move outside of my workout. And because the problem was with my spine, I couldn't activate my transverse abdominals, I couldn't stabilize myself with my core, and even carrying a bag of groceries on one side was really, really difficult. Of course, I was a little bit frustrated by the whole thing, but I wasn't gonna let it throw me off track. I just knew when I was able to, I had to rebuild. And I think oftentimes when we have these setbacks, when we have these things show up, it can feel really easy to want to throw in the towel. And I remember back when I like first started my fitness journey, it would feel like hiccups and things like that would be super detrimental because you're like, oh, I'm in a good pattern, I'm in a good groove. And then if one thing upsets it, it almost feels like you have to completely rebuild from the get-go. But that's not the case. So today I want to share some game-changing habits with you that are going to allow you to be flexible through life season instead of feeling like you're constantly starting and stopping. When life throws us curveballs, it's our mindset that determines the response to that event. And cultivating a more resilient mindset is going to allow us to navigate this with more grace and more determination. Your mindset is everything. Like that famous quote says, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. If we can view challenges as opportunities for growth and opportunities for learning, we will approach them very, very differently and they will feel very different. I'm going to talk about fitness here, but I feel like this applies to most of life in general. But obviously I am a nutritionist and a trainer and a wellness coach. So a lot of what I talk about is going to involve your fitness and your health. A fitness routine, like it or not, is very, very often accompanied with physical and mental barriers. That's just how the process works. Time constraints, fatigue, self-doubt, fear of failure, all of these things can hinder progress. And all of these things can be triggered and show up even more if we've had a setback. An approach that I really like to encourage is curiosity instead, because I think this is going to allow you to have a problem-solving attitude and we can approach it with less judgment. So yeah, I was a bit annoyed when I injured my back and I knew I wouldn't be able to train, but at the same time, yeah, there was that level of frustration, but I also wanted to really, really hold that curiosity and go, okay, well, if I can't train, how do I make sure that I stay organized with my nutrition? Okay, if I'm going to have to build back in slowly and I'm only allowed to train 2 days a week, how can I incorporate more functional movements that are going to train my transverse abdominals, that are going to make sure I get that core stability back, that are going to make sure that I am protecting my back moving forward, and approaching it with an attitude of what is possible rather than feeling frustrated all the time. I really think the sustainability of like a fitness or health routine fully depends on your mindset and how you think about what you're doing. Many people embark on fitness journeys with like a short-term result in mind, like, oh, I really want to lose this amount of weight in this amount of time, or they'll stick to a gym routine for a month or 2 months and then they get bored and they fall off. I think this is often driven by external expectations like societal pressures or just aesthetic ideals, you know? But a mindset that is focused more on curiosity, intrinsic motivation, and personal growth is going to foster a long-term commitment, something that is driven from deeply within you. And again, this doesn't just apply to fitness, this applies to how you approach your education, how you approach your employment, how you approach your relationships even. Okay, so if you're in the middle of a less than ideal situation right now when it comes to your health and fitness journey, I want you to develop a mental plan for yourself to follow. I like to call this a contingency plan, but in psychology principles, it's known as implementation intentions. I've also been working on a little something that's going to help you with this. Like, even if you're a past client of mine, this is going to give you a kick up the butt if you need it. I'm so excited. I'm actually going to record a demonstration video for it today. It's a little bit different to anything that I've made before, so I can't wait to share it with you guys. I think it should be ready by the time I upload my next video. So make sure you check out that next one if you want a foolproof method to setting up this plan. So if we can implement a really powerful strategy of if-then planning, we can anticipate any potential obstacles that might come up, and then we can proactively troubleshoot them before they even happen. So the way that works is very obvious with the name, but it links a potential if to a then. So the first step is we want to anticipate slip-ups, events, things that are going to happen. Also, potentially things that are outside of your control. It could be anything like social events, to injury, to a busier work schedule depending on what time of the year it is, to travel, whatever it looks like. Obviously, don't go and plan a contingency for every single thing because mentally you'll be exhausted, but just think about what's coming up in your immediate horizon. Once we've identified potential slip-ups, we can then formulate the then responses to those statements. So some examples could be, I'll take from my personal store that I have. For context, sometimes when I do my one-on-one coaching calls, depending on what time of the year it is, I might not finish work until 8 or 8:30 p.m. at night because I'll be talking to someone in Europe and our time zone's a little bit funky, so I'll do calls a little bit later. So if that's the case and I've had a busy work day, I've finished a little bit later, and I could say, if I finish work late and I'm tired and for some reason I don't have anything prepped, then instead of ordering food, I'm just gonna make protein oats for dinner because it's easy and I can throw a bunch of nutrient-dense ingredients in there. If I've injured myself and I'm not allowed to do any weight-based training, I can only do body resistance, then what I will do is make sure I'm doing my core work every second day and I'm being gentle with myself, not feeling bad about what I can't do, and going for walks. And this even works like, let's say you're in a social situation and you just personally don't feel like drinking that night. You could say, if someone comes and offers me a drink of a cocktail or spirits or something, then I'll say, no thanks, can I have a diet soda or something like that. Formulate the response, plan in advance, especially if you know there's something coming up that will test you. Now, when you are getting back into routine, I don't want you to go full throttle straight away. Don't go from 0 to 100. Build back your training routine with maybe a predetermined split. I went and rewrote my training routine to accommodate for the fact that when I did start going back to the gym again, I could first only start with 2 days per week, and then I could only do 3 days per week. I'm still only able to do 3 days per week. Especially if you've trained for a while, it's really natural to be super eager and want to jump back in full force after injury or time off. It's really important to recognize that we need to approach it with a graded, gradual response. Pushing back into it too hard and too quickly can lead to fatigue, it can lead to burnout, and it can of course lead to injury as well, which is what we don't want to do. I want you to focus on 2 words here, patience and progression, because this is going to let us move forward and rebuild that momentum in a sustainable way. Our bodies are remarkably adaptable, but they do need time, especially if you've had a period of inactivity. Muscles can weaken, joints can be a little more sore, a little more stiff, and typically your cardiovascular endurance decreases as well. But instead, by slowly building back in, give ourselves a proper opportunity to rebuild strength, to rebuild flexibility, to rebuild endurance. So I think it's really crucial to manage expectations and set some realistic goals during this rebuilding period, which that little tool that I was telling you about that I've been making, well, I've already been using it myself for ages. I have to make a new one for you guys to use, a blank one. When that's ready next week, you guys are gonna love it. I wanted to take a brief little break here just to say thank you again to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. They're an all-in-one website builder and host, and I've used them to host my Eat Run Lift website for probably about 8 years now, a long time. It's such an easy way to customize your presence on the web. They have these amazing templates you can jump in, drag, drop, set it up exactly the way that you want it. You can even go in and code in some extra little tweaks if you want to make it fully yours. And then in almost no time at all, once you've applied your branding, you can get everything up and ready to go. Whether you want to work on an e-commerce store, a blog like I have, a private membership to sell your services, or even a portfolio or CV, it is so easy for you to get started. If you'd like to give it a try, jump on, set up a free trial, explore it, see how you go, and then when you're ready to hit publish, use the URL which I'll put on the screen or in the description box, and that will give you a discount off your first purchase. Now I'd like to invite you to shift your mindset to focus on habits and routine rather than purely on outcome. Outcomes and goals, they're like the big shiny things, right? Like they're the things that we're looking for off in the distance. But I feel a lot of people neglect to focus on the here and now. They neglect to find joy in their routine. They neglect to find what actually makes them happy with what they're working on. It doesn't have to be such a grind. Like, you can enjoy what you're doing. In fact, I actively invite you to enjoy what you're doing. This is what I say to my coaching clients when we're working on their nutrition. I'm like, I need you to tell me if something's not working. I want to make sure that throughout this process, we find food that not only aligns with your goals and the aesthetic outcomes that you have or the health outcomes that you want to achieve, but also that you just enjoy what you're doing on a general basis. I want you to be at work and instead of going and getting takeaway for lunch, be like, yes, I've got this meal. I love it. I packed it. I can't wait to eat it. In this fast-paced and ever-changing world, it is so easy to become fixated on immediate outcomes and immediate results. I think it's easy to find ourselves consumed by that desire for immediate gratification, seeking instant success or like an instant shift. But this focus can not only be detrimental to our long-term outcomes, but also just our general well-being. The true secret to success lies not in obsessing over results, but in the consistent practice of routines and habits. When we fixate too much on the outcome, we're actually risking throwing ourselves off our established routines, especially in the desire to get somewhere quicker. We can feel overwhelmed, uncertain, just unsure of what step to take next. But I want you to start to view nourishing and self-care based habits and routines as anchors that are going to keep you grounded. Give you stability, they'll give you consistency, even when it feels like everything else is a little bit chaotic. I think on top of that as well, they'll also serve as a reminder for our values and for our priorities, because when we start to get disconnected from our values, that's where we start to lose ourselves. And when we're feeling a little bit lost, it's going to feel even harder to maintain that routine that you want. Now, I'd like you to search for ways to eliminate your decision fatigue. What we're doing requires so many decisions every single day, hundreds, maybe even thousands of decisions, especially when it comes to food choices. And then out on top of that, we've got work decisions to make. We've got household decisions to make. If you've got kids, you've got their decisions to make. But constantly having to make decisions can lead to a little bit of fatigue, which is why I like to automate or pre-think some of my choices, particularly when it comes to food. I feel like food is a very, very easy one to do this for, and training too. Like training, if you've got a set split, a set structure, even my clients will say like, oh my goodness, like I love being able to go into the gym and not have to think. Like, I love that you've planned everything for me and I know what to execute. And with meals too, the less thinking we have to do, the easier it is to make good choices, to make choices that align with who we want to be, that align with our values, and that make us feel good too. This doesn't have to look like just meal prep. I know that's everyone's first thought when it comes to eliminating decision fatigues with meals, but if you don't like that, don't do that. Something that I would actively push and encourage you to think about is maybe just ingredient prepping instead. I feel like that's a lot more achievable for a vast majority of people. So I'm going to say the obvious as well, which is focusing on whole foods, lean proteins, a variety of colorful fruits and vegetables. And by doing this, you're going to set yourself up for making more nourishing choices. Just going to reinforce those mindful eating habits. Even though you've had a setback, an interruption, an injury, whatever has gone on for you right now. Remember how I was talking about curiosity? This is where we want to use it. We want to use this event to learn about ourselves. During the process of rebuilding, this is where we're given a really, really unique opportunity to learn a lot about us as a person. You might unearth hidden strengths, hidden capabilities that you didn't know were there. You might identify things that would have thrown you off before, or things that impact the relationship that you have with food, the relationship that you have with your body. Think of it this way: adversity acts as a catalyst for self-discovery. It's going to allow you to tap into your inner resources. It's going to allow you to see what's there and really pull through for yourself. And that's what develops confidence, is going, okay, I know what choices I want to make, and now I actually followed through and I showed up for myself. And that's going to make you feel so proud. Nothing else can give you that same feeling of accomplishment and pride in yourself. And eventually, over time, setbacks, which once would have seemed like insurmountable, they start to feel like stepping stones, and you'll realize you're capable of more and more. Given a unique opportunity for clarity and finding out what matters to us, because it's going to allow you to reassess your priorities, reassess your values, reassess your goals if you need to, which again, I'm so excited for you guys to get your hands on what I've been working on. Next week, I promise, next week. To sum it up, patience, progression. These are going to be key ingredients. Life isn't about avoiding the challenges altogether. It's not about never running into roadblocks, but rather it's about developing your personal strength, your resilience, and your adaptability to take these things on and to take them with grace. I hope you're well. I'll see you soon.